Hello and welcome to this pedestrian space hosted roundtable. It is Friday evening here in Warsaw. We have a featured guest who is based in Switzerland, also a correspondent of the Global Walkability Correspondents Network, for which this roundtable is for. Kyan Rytzell. Raised in Geneva, Kyan studied physiotherapy in the Netherlands and is now working in Zurich. He did his bachelor's thesis on walking as a means to treat lower back pain, and he is doing a further study in Switzerland about walkable networks and public space. I'm really looking forward to your presentation today, Kian. Thanks for taking the time, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we're gonna talk about many perspectives from a health point of view and also mental point of view on walking. So I'm gonna share my screen now. I guess you guys can see it pretty much. Cool. All right. So the program for today, I did my bachelor thesis on low back pain, which is the most common musculoskeletal issue in our society. And I'm going to briefly explain the biopsychosocial model and maybe how we can use this for built environment techniques. Also, I'm going to talk about the neuro rehabilitation center I've been working in and how the environment really promotes walking, and how we assess, actually how we use walking as a tool to treat as well neuro patients. And the last two are more, I would not say physiotherapy oriented, but health oriented, but more about what we're doing right now as a project. It's kind of an urban regeneration, so industry area, and how during the first weeks of the analysis we did Lynch Maps and how we can use those to basically map the city in our head. And the last one was the Swiss pedestrian mobility, and basically now they're giving so much importance to the pedestrian feeling and not just like numbers. So I think that those aspects are really interesting. So let's start with low back pain. So that was the title of my thesis, a walking program to address the physical, mental, and social aspect of a low back pain. I did it at the University of Saxion, which is in Netherlands. And basically we had to do an innovation. So I started with a company in Netherlands, which is called Xsense. And they use sensors, and I was like, oh, cool, we're gonna analyze like movements of patients. And then I started to question the very definition of innovation, which is actually not invention, but the diffusion of an innovation. So I thought, okay, what's the main thing humans should do to get healthy or to be healthy or to keep their health? And how can we diffuse it, right? And so that was walking, because that's the main mean we use to move ourselves. So I was like, okay, how can we use walking as a mean to treat low back pain? And I look for research on it, and you don't have a lot, but they do say that walking is as beneficial as any other kind of therapy, may that be manual therapy, massage, whatever, acupuncture, fitness. And well, you have a lot more health benefits to walking than just as a way to treat low back pain. Okay, so I tried my I did the implementation of my thesis in the Italian part of Switzerland, and it didn't work out because, well, I had to find a reason why it didn't work out. And the Italian part, I started to understand that people come with an expectation. You know, they come to physiotherapy with an expectation. They were like, oh, okay, I expect my therapist, I will just lay down and my therapist will do something to me. and basically they take a passive approach to their treatment. And also on a health insurance perspective, like the health insurance wouldn't cover any problems outside of the clinic. So basically for safety reasons, you had to stay inside. But I think those two elements are really interesting because basically they say how culture view their health, you know, how active are people towards their health. And so that was the Ticino in southern part of Switzerland. And then I went to Oslo and we recruited a few patients through social networks. And basically the bachelor thesis was more about lifestyle changes. So how can you change a passive way of handling low back pain to a more like active lifestyle? So for instance, one of my patients came to me and say, oh, when I walk up the stairs, it's painful in my back, but when I do 2 by 2, then it's okay. So I'm like, okay, well then do 2 by 2. The main thing was basically to get the patient to use the stairs instead of the lift, so he would get more muscle activity in his glutes and legs and abs, which usually helps for low back pain. And the second part of the thesis, and I think that's really important, was a social anchor. So that was the patient had to do an activity. He had to choose a goal or an activity. In that case, he chose cross-country skiing competition to do with friends. And the main thing was he had to train this activity with someone. So basically, he would become a health advocate. So basically, as you were saying, when you start to engage, you know, into mobility talks, well, at this moment he started to engage with his friends group, a health or a active lifestyle talk, you know. So he would himself promote active lifestyles, which is the main thing to prevent low back pain. And the funny story is there was this lady in the tram that was carrying groceries. And I proposed my help to her, and I was, hey, can I help you to, well, she was, you know, pretty old. So I asked her, can I help you? And she said, no, I have to do it on my own. And I think this story can really relate to, you know, how active or passive certain cultures are towards, you know, physical activity and daily activities. And yeah, so I think culture is really a big factor for the implementation of active lifestyles in physiotherapy. So basically walking to treat low back pain. And also my confidence was higher in promoting this kind of behavioral change because, well, when you just work, you get more experience. So that was a factor. And then I went to Zurich for my last internship. That was the Clinic Lang, so that's the building right there. And I had a few patients every day that were, so it was a neuro rehabilitation center. So people would have a stroke or Parkinson or multiple sclerosis, and they would come to the clinic and basically they had to learn to walk again. And most of them were planned some treadmill session, which was indoor on the right side of that building. And after a few weeks, I took the responsibility and I said, hey, I asked my patients, the one I knew could go outside, because it was a risk, but it was not too much of a risk that they could not walk outside. And I asked them, hey, do you want to go and walk outside? And most of the time, actually, the patients would say, oh, yes, because that was probably the only time they would go out for the day, you know. So I think that was really interesting. But we will come back on the neuro rehabilitation and how to use walking as a mean to basically treat neuro patients. So the conclusion for my bachelor thesis about walking is basically you have to change the patient's expectations. So you have to go from a passive to an active way of treating. And basically this mentality, this mindset, has to transfer into their, we call it everyday activities, and most importantly, participation, which is a concept we will come back. Participation is basically how those activities translate into social behavior, you know. So you can use walking as a means to transport yourself, but you can use walking as a way to go and meet some friends or whatever that is. You can go for a walk with some friends, or you can use walking as a way to go to the place where you meet some friends. So that's physical activity, and then participation. And the participation is basically what motivates someone to move. So I think that's really important. And also the cultural aspect of physiotherapy really dictates how we how we do just physiotherapy and how active people are. Again, the conclusion about that social anchor, I think that was a huge factor for the good implementation of the bachelor thesis. And again, that relates to participation. So basically, if you get someone into, oh, I'm going to do physical activity with someone, they become a health advocate. And I think that's the key. And for my current practice right now, I'm the only physio that goes outside with his patients, because we have a little hill, and I think going up and down a hill for a knee rehab or for ankle rehab, that's pretty much, that's a really good exercise. And if you can teach people their behavior outside of the clinic, not just in the clinic, then you win, because then they see what they can do for themselves. Okay, that was for the bachelor thesis. Now for the neuro rehabilitation. So basically, gait is the main goal for a neuro rehabilitation. So people come in a wheelchair and they have to somehow walk in a safe way after 1 or 2 or 3 months of rehabilitation. And even if someone has a stroke and for instance, only the left arm is not able to move and their left leg is fine, which is possible, even training hard with the legs will create growth factors in the brain, which promotes neuroplasticity, which basically says that if we train hard with the whole body, we create growth factors that are active all around the body and especially in the brain. And basically we can learn to use our left arm better because we're training hard with our legs. So I think that's the most amazing thing. So a neuro rehabilitation will go in those steps. So basically the first step is to move in the bed, you know, roll to the side, and then be able to sit on the side of the bed, and then be able to stand. And then the more a patient in the first 2 weeks can do those activities, then the better the chances are that he will be able to walk again. And that's a predictive factor, you know, how well they can move in their bed will predict how well they can walk in the future, 2, 3, 5, 6 months. And so then we help them walk we with some aids or against the wall. And then when we feel they are good enough, then we use a belt around them in order for them to be able to experience how walking feels like. And in case they fall, we have a belt so we can catch them. And then when everything goes well, we do the stairs up. Upstairs is usually easier than downstairs. And then when usually that goes well, when we go outside for a little round in half an hour, we do 100, 400 meters. So what you think? You might be able in half an hour to walk like 1, 2, 3K. Well, in half an hour, we do 100 and 400 meters. But from there on, usually the rehabilitation is exponential, because then it's just a matter, they know how to walk, basically. They just need to get like stronger endurance. And usually it's like 1 or 2%, how do you call that? Up and down So the slope is 1 or 2%, so it's pretty flat. And then the really good ones, then they go on uneven surfaces, 2 to 10% slope, and then 4 to 800 meter in half an hour. And then, well, if they're able to do that, pretty much they're able to go back home. But it's not only about numbers, it's about also the quality. Sorry. Well, we can go there. So for instance, as I said, the slope is a really important factor, and also how well they are oriented spatially. You know, do they know where they are, where the clinic is, where the room is? How do they react to changes of surfaces? You know, gravel or like concrete or like grass. And also, most importantly, that's really, really important, how they react to motorized vehicles. So we would take a walk around the clinic, and then if a vehicle would come, motorized vehicle, like how they would react. Would they see it? Would they hear it? Would they go on the side? Would they slow down and stop? You know. So basically, if they do react in a good way for all of those changes, you know, slope or orientation or change in surfaces, and most importantly, motorized vehicle, well, that will determine if they are ready to go back home independently, you know, or because if they're not able to deal with those challenges in the outside, then they are not ready, they are not independent. So basically, those are negative factors for the rehabilitation, but if the patient do respond well to it, then they're ready to go back home. So that's how the world is pretty much. So we need to put the patients in a situation where it's at the limit for them and they need to learn, and then we see if they can react. The positive effect, though, on walking outside, as I told you, I would take my patients outside. They would get sun, fresh air, and also a sense of freedom. You know, it's like they are not on a treadmill; they are actually outside, and they can see children playing. They see the view on the lake, the mountains, and nature, the flowers, the garden, the trees, the birds, the animals. The clinic had some pigs and horses, even a fountain. And most importantly, and I will talk about, I'm talking about again, participation. So as soon as they go outside and they are spatially oriented, then they usually would go for a coffee, you know, in the late afternoon or in the weekend with their family. And that's basically already kind of restoring their social participation. So they would not only be able to, do their neuro rehabilitation, but they would also have social activities outside of the neuro rehabilitation in a cafe 100 or 200 meters from the clinic. So I think that's a really motivating factor, basically restoring social participation. Okay. Are you guys following?
Yes.
No. Okay. Is it too fast, or it's okay?
You're good. Yeah, keep going.
Okay, cool. So now less about the health part of walking, but more about the mental aspect, like how we view our environment. So we're doing a project right now in Switzerland as part of that study I'm doing. And we have an industry area. And basically it's an industry area, so it's definitely not, you would not think of it as a walkable area. But most importantly, you know, you would go to that area through the main road. But that's not the most, how can I say it? It's not the most intuitive and the most economical way of going to that area. So in your mind, okay, in the map, you can go to the area using the road, but intuitively there is a small path that's actually following the river, but it's not is not made, you know, for bicycles or like people to walk. It's just dirt, but intuitively that's the one you would use. And the one that is official is longer and it's going up and down the hill and it takes longer. So, and also you have a more motorized vehicle, whereas the other one, which is following the river, is really quiet and safe, but you need to know it. And once you know it, it becomes intuitive. You just use it. So I think that's a really important aspect of how we map the different areas of our city in our head and how we connect them, you know, and you're like, oh, if I need to go from this point to this point, I need to use the car. But if I want to go from this point to this point, oh, I know a shortcut. I can, you know, cross this and then that's it. I can walk to this area. So I don't know if you guys are interested or we have time to do a little exercise, but about Lynch Map, maybe we do it at the end if we have time. But basically what we're doing at the urban regeneration project that we're doing is connect this industry area, which is not walkable and not readable in the mind, you know, as the walkable network is not, you don't grasp it. Basically, we need to make this area more readable and more permeable to the other areas. That's the work. Okay, and that was a project we did in Netherlands. We did so that's a map. It's a heat map actually, and then in the background, so you can see the areas where you have heat, which is red, and then yellow, which is low heat, and then white, which is pretty much cool. And we put a glass on top of it, and then we did a Lynch map actually. So you can see the dashed red lines, that's the train track, and then you have some roads, and you also have some rivers and parks. And and then that didn't explain all of the heat changes in some areas. So we're like, okay, we're gonna take a map and just add all the individual trees. And that made a huge difference, because then basically the heat map would start to make more sense, because those individual trees, even in private gardens, would decrease the heat. But that's not the topic. But basically, the Lynch map you can use it. So parks usually and rivers and train tracks and roads are basically kind of doing the borders mentally in our of different areas. And then I think what's also really interesting is how food, and if you go on Google, how those yellow areas, if you go in a city, you will see basically the heat spots, you know, social heat spots are always in yellow, and it's usually related as well to food and cafes, and how basically food is such a social thing. And again, in that urban regeneration project that we have in Switzerland, we have a supermarket in the industry area, and it's the only place where people would go. It's a supermarket, but still people would come to get lunch, you know. So that makes the place social in a way, but even though it's a supermarket. So basically, how parks, rivers, train tracks, roads define different areas, and how we connect the meaningful areas. So I would say the yellow areas on Google, and usually they're connected with food, and how we connect those areas together, and how we create our mental maps, you know. And I have a funny story. So I went to take the train the other day, and I wanted to grab a coffee, so a cappuccino. And I think the milk was outdated. So the coffee was definitely not good. So now every time I pass by this area, well, this coffee, I know I'm not getting coffee from there because the emotion was negative. And in the brain, the center for spatial orientation and emotion are pretty much next to each other. So emotions, how we experience emotionally the area, is it noisy? Is it safe? Which smell, which experience I had, you know, oh, I met a friend there. I guess my girlfriend over there. There is a good restaurant over there. Well, basically those are positive or negative emotions, and they also shape the way we view the city or any area. And so that's the last point I want to make, is how now the Swiss Pedestrian Mobility, or the Swiss Pedestrian Federation, is putting an emphasis on how we experience those areas, you know, how, well, if there is food, water, toilet, well, that, like babies, you know, we need food, water, and we need to go to the toilet, okay. But also how we experience the noise from the streets, the heat, the rain, and also that aspect again about social participation and social interaction. When we see other humans like hugging or chatting or a baby playing, then automatically this area in our brain becomes like, oh, this is a social place, this is a safe place, you know. And I took that picture in Netherlands, and those were like children drawings, like chalk drawings, and we can look at signs of like, okay, this is a healthy neighborhood because, well, you have chalk in the street, right? And that means children are playing in the street, and those are signs that basically an area is safe and we feel safe in that area. And also when people, for instance, hug or kiss or hold hands in the street, we know, okay, this is a safe street usually. And in a street where you don't feel safe, well, we're maybe not gonna kiss someone or, you know, hug someone at that place. You want to go out of that place. Okay, well, I think that was it. If you guys have any question, or if we can start a discussion, I would be really happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyan. Going into Q&A, I just want to set the guidelines if we could do raised hands, and Kyan, probably you can be a force in moderating as well, as you're the guest. So we just so we can have a smooth flow, folks, if you can put questions in the chat or just raise your hand so Kyan can call on people. I really liked your presentation.
Excellent presentation. I'm just curious mostly about any pushback you got from anyone. You kind of touched on that with some of the hilly stuff, but curious to know if anybody's been kind of like negative towards your approach.
You mean for the physiotherapy approach now at the clinic?
Yes.
You mean at the neuro rehabilitation center, or just a
right medical? Yeah. Yes. Right.
Well, I always give the choice. So if I was in the neuro rehabilitation center, I would always give the choice: do you want to walk in on the treadmill or go outside? That's actually increasing patients' autonomy, which is a good thing. And they would usually say yes, and if they wanted to stay inside, well, they can stay inside. I'm not there to force them, you know. So so that's one part. And now in my current physical therapy practice, are you from the US? Yes. So physical therapy practice, it depends on the patient, you know. It's not, you cannot treat everything with walking, definitely. But for knee arthritis or ankle sprain or knee rehab, low back pain, hip replacement, whatever, I usually, at least my thinking is, I need to get them active, not only in the physiotherapy practice, but this behavior needs to translate into their everyday life. So I would take them outside in the hill as a way to teach them, hey, this is what you can do for you every day. You know, it's like, hey, just go for a walk 10, 20 minutes. You will create some synovial fluid that will basically give nutrients to your joints. And basically the goal is to teach them an active lifestyle. And if they don't want to go outside, well, too bad for them. Too bad for them, because it's not in the physiotherapy clinic once or twice a week that you're gonna cure a hip arthritis. You need to be moving every day for that. So, well, then I failed as a therapist, basically, if I didn't manage to get them active. I don't know if this is answering your question. I think.
Yeah, very helpful. Thank you very much.
Okay. So we talk about physiotherapy, like walking, low back pain, then neuro rehabilitation, and then there was Lynch Map, and then there was pedestrian feelings, you know. So those are the 4 topics I mentioned today. I don't know if you guys have any question on those 4.
Mohammed has a question.
Yes. Well, can the research is really new to me. You have my sound? You have my sound?
We can hear you.
Oh, I'm having problem with that. Sorry, just a moment. I don't know. I typed it anyway.
Mohammed, do you have a question?
Anyway, yes. Okay, I have the sound. Thanks, Brooke. Ken, the idea of the research is really interesting for me. I don't know. How did it pop up in your mind? Is it rooted in your, in your experiment, your previous experiment, or something else?
Do you mean, why do I mention Lynch Maps?
No, I mean the whole idea, the whole research, physiotherapy outside, I mean something like that.
So like
In the,
treating people outside and for physiotherapy, you mean?
yes.
I think there is a big I was lucky enough to be able to study in Netherlands, and I also studied a year in Barcelona, and I did internships in the Italian part of Switzerland, German part of Switzerland, and Norway, and also one in California. So I could see the different like ways of doing physical therapy, and how culture dictates how we do physiotherapy, and how you can use physiotherapy to also change the mindset and the behavior of people towards a more active lifestyle. And I think the Dutch are really pushing towards this. And also there are also, I would say, an active culture. They do a lot of cycling. There are a lot of outdoor. So this is where I went to study. And I think that pretty much also changes the way I think about health and physiotherapy. If I was studying in Italy or in Spain or even in Switzerland, that would be way different. And I would probably not think the way I think now about active lifestyles, outdoor, and health promotion. I would probably think more passive treatments, massage, and yeah. So I think it's mostly because I've been studying in Netherlands and I could see different cultures and mindsets and how they relate to each other towards health. I would say so. So I would say Netherlands is the main thing. And especially our school, man. Our school was, our university was really pushing towards active lifestyles and social participation way more than any other university I've seen. So I think that's the main thing. Yeah.
I have another question, and if you when I go, I go first.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would like to know. Okay, I would like to know about the Lynch map. How did you? I mean, Lynch map you don't provide it for you, so you have to ask people. Would you mind to talk about it a little bit more?
So Lynch map is a way of representing a space and how certain features of that space define the space. So if you have a rail track, well, in the mind it's pretty, and physically it's pretty hard to cross that rail track unless you have like a passage under or over. So I think there are books about Lynch maps on how to do them, how you can draw them. But most importantly, I think it's just you do it intuitively, and I think you can do all the studies you want, but intuitively, which path do you take? Oh, because it's the quiet one, or because it's the one that's following the river and you like to follow the river because that's a good walk instead of taking the busy road, even though it takes 2 more minutes, So that's a way of representing physically in an area, but I would say you should also use it to that's my own interpretation. How do you experience the paths emotionally, like how do you feel on those routes? Do you feel like safe? Do you feel calm? How do you feel afterwards? When you've crossed a busy area or when you've crossed a park or why? Yeah. So Lynch maps, yes, it's a way of representing space, but I think also if you want to go a step forward, also how do you emotionally experience that place, Where do you connect with that area? Is it with food? Where do you connect also with your memories, where, oh, this is where I met this person, or that's where I tried this disgusting coffee. Well, now every time I pass by, I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna go back there. So emotions plus Lynch map, I think that really creates a powerful tool to map a city in a known. It's different for everyone. I don't know if that helps you, but there are some books about Lynch maps though, and how to do them. If you want, I can give them to you.
Thank you. Yeah. Anyway, that was very great.
Okay, I'll ask my question. Well, it's more of a comment that I really, preparing to watch your presentation, I think there were some things I expected, but the cultural aspect was very unexpected for me and very interesting and like surprising dimension that you include. It was something that I did not expect going into a presentation on physiotherapy. So I think you've already addressed it when you answered Mohammed, about first of all these places you've studied and how that has impacted what you've been looking at. But I'm curious for the future, are there any other aspects of, the cultural dimensions of physiotherapy or specific cultures that you're kind of interested in, if you had the opportunity to look at further or bring into your work?
So I think my really, when you think about health or physiotherapy, you're trying to promote health, you know, and the question is, how do you bring people around meaningful activities? So you can say, okay, let's grab a beer and some fried food, and you gather people, and then they gather around this, and that works well, and that's how most of parties work. But it's a social activity, definitely. The question I'm trying to answer at this moment is, how do you bring people from different cultures around an activity? Which elements are bringing people together? So you can think, you have elements like, I would say food definitely is a thing. So that's why you have like food and music. So food, music, you have a lot of food festivals, you have a lot of music festivals. So those are activities that bring people together. Sport, you can think about it. So like soccer, dancing. Dancing is a very cultural thing. And it's pretty healthy and it brings people together. So food, sport, dancing. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, art as well. And I wanted to say the last one. Nature, I also think if you do bring people around nature, that's also a big aspect. But because you also bring people's awareness about nature, which is really important. And so your question was which aspect of cultural aspect I'm trying to study or bring into. I think cross-culturally speaking, what brings people together? You know what I mean? So you can take like Persian tradition, cultures, poetry, dancing, music, food, and you can take the French one, and you can take the Spanish one, the Italian one, you know, and well, okay, what brings people together at this moment? And I think that's the big challenge. And how do you put this in an urban environment? So yeah, that's the main thing. So I think those are really, really healthy social participation, because we have like the structure. Okay, you have pain in your knee, then you cannot walk, then you cannot meet your people, you know. And usually we treat the pain in the knee, but the social aspect and the activity aspects of walking or whatever that is, or drinking a beer, that's also an activity. And then how does that relate to the social activity? So I think the biopsychosocial, so bio is the knee, psycho is how do you feel, and then social, the social participation, like which activities are meaningful. And cross-culturally, I think that's the main thing. You know, of course, you cannot do ice bathing in Spain in summer, but that's a cultural thing in Norway that brings people together. So it's a very big question, but I think if we look more into that as physiotherapists or as city planners or even as people that work in the gastronomy or in the entertainment, like how do you bring people cross-culturally together around meaningful activities? And I think food and many type of arts and movements do bring people together. Yeah, I think that's, I don't know what you think about this, but definitely that's something I'm thinking about at this moment.
I think it was really interesting, and as you're speaking, I'm thinking of how in there's a narrative now about, we need to make the city. Of course, we need more than city planners. We should have many disciplines. And I think maybe
Yeah, definitely.
physiotherapists should be among them, because when you're speaking about space, and I love this biopsychosocial approach. It's really fascinating. And I like the part of your presentation where you're speaking about the cafe. I forgot, how did you refer to that when they go to the cafe with their family? What was it, like an enforcer?
The Neuro Rehabilitation Center. So one of the first goal that we have is to get them to walk and to know where the cafe is. So this is the clinic. This is it's the cafe of the clinic, but it's like another building. And basically, when they know where they are and they are able to walk, or even just where they know where they are, and they are on a wheelchair and they go with their family, they are outside with their family doing something, and that's already a huge win. Social participation is a huge thing, and basically that's also what I did for my bachelor thesis about walking, is promote healthy activities and then have that social anchor, which is do the activity with someone of your social circle. And I think that just works really well. You can take an example. Take an activity you don't want to do. Say to a friend, hey, let's meet at, I don't know, 8 on a Saturday, and let's do it. Pretty much. I think that will work. Or even take 2 or 3 friends, if you want to do physical activity or whatever. And it doesn't have to be something that you don't want to do, but something that you also want to do.
For future roundtables, I am curious, we talk about this later, but I am curious if you're able to speak to outside of the clinic, so walking, basically physical benefits of walking in general, and the neuroplasticity, kind of focusing on that and helping us lay people understand what's happening, when we feel revived by walking, what's happening at the cellular level, or if you have an idea for somebody we can host and that you can then help co-host that talk, that'd be really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. I think Mohammed has a question for you in the.
Can you have it? Is that the question you have? Can you have any drafts from your research available to the public? There is a blog post on environmental physiotherapy about my thesis. Is that what you expect?
Yes. If you have any link for that would be really great.
I'm gonna send you the link right now.
Thank you.
They're gonna publish it in a couple of physiotherapy association. Tag. The blog post is gonna be coming in a couple of I can send you the link of the environmental physiotherapy, and then I don't know if it's already on the blog. You have it?
Yes, thank you.
One sec.
Well, he's doing that. We're coming up on an hour, so please think if you have any more questions, if you don't mind just saying something in the chat so I can be aware. Otherwise, we're gonna round up.
That was the bread in the oven. It was beeping. It's not, the blog post is not on yet. They are working on it, but that's one way you can have my bachelor thesis in a couple of weeks on that website. But for legal reasons, I don't think I can send you my bachelor thesis.
Yeah, I'm not asking for that. Yes.
But the blog post will be available on the environmental physiotherapy in a couple of weeks. That's for sure.
Okay, while you were checking your bread, I think, bread in the oven.
Yeah, there was beeping, so I just opened the thing.
So you've got bread almost ready. We're coming up in an hour. If there's no more questions, please say something in the chat. If you do have a question, I think we'll round up and say thank you. And looking forward to hopefully a next time. More of-
Definitely.
yeah. So thank you very much, and we will look forward to next time.
Yeah, definitely about well, thank you. Thank you guys.
Great. So thank you, Blair, Mohammed. We had Mohammed from Isfahan, Iran, Blair, New York, Carrie, who had to go to another meeting in Portland, Maine, myself in Warsaw, and are you currently in Zurich?
Geneva.
You're in Geneva. Okay. So a nice little spread, and our first roundtable on physiotherapy for sure. So you're the resident physiotherapist in the network. So really happy to have you, and looking forward to next time.
Thank you.
Enjoy your bread.
Yeah. Pretty
Okay.
cool.
Bye,
Was
everyone.
this what you expected? Pretty much.
For me, it was great. It was fantastic. I don't know if the other
Okay.
participants want to, I mean, I think Blair's comments there, she wrote that was absolutely fascinating. I think it's great feedback, and I'm really happy we're still recording. I'm going to put this up on our YouTube, and again, I think it'd be really wonderful there's so much more we can go into with your work.
Well, definitely the mental aspect and
The mental aspect, yeah.
yeah.
And emotional. Especially coming out of COVID, I'd be really interested. The lockdowns of the past couple of years and the restrictions on walking in different places and the kind of awareness that came out of that too about mental health and move. I mean, I'm assuming we already had that awareness as people, but that kind of compounded how serious it is to limit people's ability. What's Blair saying? Okay. Right, really great feedback. So, yeah, it wasn't a big turnout, but we're having some sort of like very chill, low turnouts for December. I think people are kind of rounding out the year, but again, I think the real value will have it be recorded and share. And I know people are going to want to see this. So thank you.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Hey, bon appetit.
Merci.